In this video, we're going to talk about how to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. Many people try and do that. Most fail. Why? Because they didn't follow one of the steps that I'm going to take you through in this presentation of what needs to be done, how you do it, and how you put together a successful campaign for the House of Representatives. Stick with me. I got a lot to share. We're going to talk about the nature of the job and why you need to understand the nature of the job that you're running for, how you need to be up to date on information and current events. We're going to talk about how you track a stout network of very influential people who are willing to help you win. And we're going to talk about the big three that are important cogs in your campaign apparatus: your message, your money, and your advertising program. I got a lot to share. There's another way to say know your stuff, and I'm going to just use this term: get the smarts. All right. So you're running in a jurisdiction where there may be 800,000 people. It's an important job. There are only 435 people elected to Congress every couple of years. That makes you one of the most important people in the United States, with a role in the federal budget and what we spend and the safety net that people have and what they pay in taxes. So your campaign is really like a long job interview with the voters in your district, and they need to be convinced that you know what you're doing, meaning you need to know your stuff, i.e., what is the size of the federal budget? Where does the money go? Where does the money come from? What is it used for? How much of the money goes to the military? How much goes to foreign aid? How much manpower is in the Department of Defense? How many people are employed by the various federal agencies? What's the level of discretionary spending? What are the other major pieces of the budget? What percentage of the budget goes to entitlements? You got to be able to answer questions about those subjects during the course of the campaign. If you don't do it, this is what's going to happen. A prominent reporter is going to ask you a question and you have no idea how to answer it. You're going to look silly when they air that segment on TV. Or a voter in a town hall meeting is going to bring up a subject that you should know backwards and forwards, and you're going to look clueless if you have no idea what they're talking about. And it's kind of an insult to voters that you're asking for this job and you're asking for this power and you don't know the answers to simple questions you should know the answers to. So fill your head with some knowledge before you embark on your campaign so that you understand the rudiments and fundamentals of the job. Now, there's a second point here about information I'm going to share with you. Campaigns for U.S. House of Representatives are sometimes very intense, and you're going to be meeting people every day on the campaign trail, and you're going to get questions from people that you didn't expect, and they're going to have these little iPhones out, sometimes taking video of the conversation. You need to stay current on current events, meaning never leave your house in the morning without checking the newspapers to make sure that you know what happened in the world the day before. On busy campaign days, check your Twitter or your X account and scroll down and look at breaking news that may be there. You sign up for breaking news alerts from political publications or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal so that you're constantly aware of things that have happened that might affect your campaign or the political environment. If you get caught being clueless about something that happened 2 days before and you don't know about it because you haven't looked at the newspaper, you will look silly. Those are two fundamental things that all successful, respected candidates for Congress do as a matter of habit. They know the job and they're current on news. I mentioned the second thing is that you need to court and that you need to have some influential people in your corner, or what we call opinion leaders. Who are those people? Well, what is an opinion leader? It could be something who, when they speak, everybody tends to listen. It could be somebody with a large following on social media that has at 1 million or 2 million or 3 million subscribers, that they pay close attention to what that person says about political candidates. It could be the leaders of the political party with which you are affiliated, the people who run the political party in your community. It could be the elected officials of your political party in your community, and incidentally, they are great sources of information, but they're also influential in their own right. Keep in mind, they've won an election. They got a mobile contact list filled with people who helped them do it. They can put you in touch with those people that are in their mobile contact list if you're kind enough to go sit down and talk with them and ask for their support. There are certain special interest groups that care passionately about who wins a congressional seat. I'll just give you one example. Pro-life groups, pro-choice groups, pro-gun groups, gun control groups. They are people who there are some who want to enlarge the social safety net, the people who want more programs for people who may be homeless or without enough food or living in dilapidated housing. There are others who are what we call anti-tax groups. All of these groups take an outsized interest in who wins an election to Congress. Now, you can court any of those that you are in sync with ideologically, but the point is, if you don't have people like that in your corner, when it comes time for the help, they're not going to have quite the echo chamber that you need. Now, there are also people in your community who matter. They may be community and civic leaders that take an outsized interest, or they may be nonprofits or organizations that are one way or another depending on federal aid to fund their programs. These are stakeholders in an election, and you need to court them because it's hard to win an election without them. Oh, incidentally, before I continue, I've written a new ebook, The 12 Essential Steps to Prepare for a Political Campaign. Here's the deal. I've worked for 402 candidates. Those that won did all of them, and those who came up short didn't do enough of them. So it's an invaluable book to you and free to you. Click the link underneath this video. Point number 3, you really need to be an expert on your jurisdiction. Now, if you don't know how to obtain the data that you need to have, why, put the question in the comment section and I'll get back to you and tell you where to find this kind of data. You need to know everything possible about the demographic profile of the people in your jurisdiction, their party affiliation, their voting history, their age, their income, where they work, or the kind of jobs that are held by people in your jurisdiction, their race, their ethnicity, the number of people in your jurisdiction who have young children in the household, the median income of your district. Why do you need all of this information? Because it's impossible to craft an intelligent message if you don't know your market. I say it's impossible. If you try and craft a message without knowing that information, your message is going to be off. Data is essential in politics. So, which leads me to my 4th point, that campaign message. The 3 major cogs in your campaign apparatus. One is the message, one is the money, and one is the advertising. And the first among equals on these 3 is your campaign message, and here's why. If your campaign message is great, you're going to pick up support. As you pick up support, money becomes easier to raise. As you raise money, the advertising is easier to fund. It's hard to raise money if you don't have a good message, and impossible to advertise if you have no money. So let's go back to that first one, because I want to go into some detail with your campaign message. Voters are going to have 5 questions for you over the course of the campaign. They're not going to look for the answers. They're not going to go look for the information. Don't expect them to go to your website to find it. They're going to expect you to tell them in your advertising. What makes you qualified for the job is the first question they have. How do I know that your moral code and your notions of right and wrong are in sync with mine? That's another question they're going to have for you. What are you going to do for me or my state or my country is question number 3, and perhaps the most important question they'll ask you. Fourth one is, how do I know I can trust you? The fifth one was, what makes you better than that person you're running against? These are all elements of a campaign message. The totality of your answers to those questions is your campaign message. This is what voters expect you to tell them over the course of a campaign. If you do not know how to do that, I have another video you should watch, how to construct a compelling campaign message. There's also a link to that in the book that you're going to get if you download it. Next thing, let's talk about the money for a second. There are multiple ways to raise money in a political campaign. There's the money you raise by asking people yourself, people you know, people you meet. You have to ask directly for money or you will never raise much money. There is what we call surrogate fundraising. Once you get a donor who really likes you and they max out to your campaign, what you next need to do is go back to that donor and say, who else do you know who'd be willing to do what you just did? And ask them to connect you with people in their contact list that are not in your contact list. There's what we call direct mail. There's what we call digital advertising. There is what we call Facebook ads. You can do this through organized events, cocktail parties, dinner parties, even celebrity events are done in congressional campaigns. But you have to have a plan to raise the money, and it needs to be consuming part of your daily routine, because without the money, you'll never get there. Which brings me to the advertising portion of this. If you're like most congressional candidates, you're going to delegate this to people who do it each and every day, which is exactly what you should do, because you shouldn't be tinkering with trying to figure out how to get an ad on Facebook. Delegate that to someone who knows how to do it. But the essential thing in your advertising team is make sure you have chemistry with them. These are people who have your political life in their hands. You have to trust them just like you would trust the surgeon to open up your chest and replace your heart. That's the kind of chemistry you need to have with your advertising team, because ultimately you may have to trust their judgment. Make sure you know how they're making their money. And the third thing is, make sure that you are their top priority, that when they're working for you, they are a one-client firm, and that they're not going to let what they're doing with somebody else interfere with doing what is right for you in your campaign. Before I go, make sure to get that book, 12 Essential Steps to Prepare for a Political Campaign.